So you are currently uh, training with a particular system. If you'd like to share what that system is, you can. If not, it's no big deal. And yeah, could you describe the system you're currently training in? And obviously, this system, I'm assuming that this system, their wisdom and their training allow you to rapidly heal with your accident, things like that, and also how people heal. Could you describe in detail what your system is, and if you can name
Yeah,
drop, cool as well.
yeah, absolutely. I also want to give some credit to the Tai Chi practices that I've been doing for years, and a lot of the Qigong and Neigong practices, which directly tie into the Kunlun system, which I've been learning for the past, I believe, 8 years. And the Kunlun system is a beautiful system that is what they call the water path, where you focus on the heart energy, because when your magnetic field, your heart energy is amplified, that energy over time automatically goes down. And then when your water energy, they call it, hits the fire energy, the root chakra, it automatically rises naturally. Hinduism, the fire path, which is a completely different system, they end up building up their root chakra energy, their fiery energy, and then they force up that energy.
So it looks like we got cut out a little bit, but you were describing the water path, how it's basically being in the heart allows you to go down the root Dantian chakra area, and then it naturally rises. Could you describe that one more time?
Yeah, so the water path is a little different than the fire path. The water path, when you're building up your heart energy and your magnetic field, automatically the energy will just go down naturally into the reservoir, which is what the Hindus call the root chakra. And that's where your fiery energy is. So when the water hits the fire, it automatically creates steam, and then the energy naturally rises to the upper channels, which is really important. The Hindu path, they build up their fiery energy and they force up that energy through different breathing techniques and yoga postures. Now, sometimes what happens with the fire path is people aren't ready for that energy to be in the upper area, so they become less grounded, and a lot of times it becomes detrimental to their path. And sometimes they even hurt their body's electrical system. So the water path is, I feel, a much more direct path. It's not as forceful, and I also believe it's a much faster path. What was explained to me when humans first fell, or lost some consciousness, initially they had direct communication with source or with some beings that were at a higher plane of reality. So those directions were one-on-one. They call that the wind path. So you had direct transmission. And over time, if those people decided to teach what they've learned, over time those teachings were eroded, and then they became the water path. If you learn something and then you teach somebody what you learned and they teach someone, the teachings change over time. So over centuries of teachings, the teachings got less and less potent and were altered somewhat. And then from the water path over time, those teachings got altered again, and then it became the fire path. So I feel the water path is a much more direct approach to accelerating one's consciousness than the fire path.
Awesome. So I just want to ask a quick question. So, I'm obviously I've mentioned Kunlun several times, and I read the books as well of the teacher, um, and I've seen all his podcasts as well without mentioning his name. Um, so the wind path is the wind. So was there originally something like a Nigong system or some type of energy system that was known as the wind path that people practiced? Or yeah, could you explain that a little bit? Like is did it kind of, was it originally like the wind path, and now it's commonly a lot of people are doing the fire path, but with Kunlun it's the water path that is a little bit more refined. Like, am I understanding that correctly? Or
Well, the developer of the Kunlun system, he is a master himself, and so is his partner. And he developed a system over decades and decades and decades of studying from different masters himself. And over time he simplified things, and a lot of times uh, there's a lot of control mechanisms where certain teachings aren't taught to the normal people. They were just for the people up in temples hidden in the mountains. And you know look what happened with Bruce Lee. He was teaching martial arts and showing everybody this magic that looked almost impossible to the normal person, and then they killed him because he was sharing information that he wasn't supposed to share, essentially. So a lot of these hidden teachings and were really controlled, but the founder of the Kunlun system wanted to share it with the world, so he developed his own system from taking the best knowledge from all these different systems and putting it together in a way where the average person could accelerate their consciousness really easily. Most people aren't going to go sit in a cave for a decade trying to become enlightened. They're too concerned with how to pay their bills. So the Kunlun system is a really simple system that allows one to get on the path, two to know the possibilities and the potential of the human species, which is, we can all become that Buddha or that Christ consciousness. And it's a really simple approach, I feel, from all the systems that I've studied, to really turn on oneself.
Well said. Kind of off topic, but we were talking offline yesterday briefly. We had a quick call, and you described that you have correct me if I'm wrong, but a judo and a BJJ background, right?
My whole life, I was in wrestling since I was 6, and
Oh,
from
same
wrestling,
here. That's awesome. I'm
yeah.
just sorry to interrupt you. If you don't mind asking, did you wrestle in Hawaii or another state?
No, I was born in Iowa, grew up in Pennsylvania,
You
New
grew oh,
Jersey.
so you wrestled in Iowa?
I was born in Iowa,
Oh,
but
so you're born here. Gotcha.
yeah, which is a huge wrestling
Right, right,
state, and,
right.
and
With
and then
Gable and yeah.
yeah, and then I grew up in Pennsylvania, which was a huge wrestling
Oh
state, and then
God, that's
yeah,
awesome. Penn State's got the best. Yeah.
yeah, and then through the years of wrestling, you learn freestyle and Roman
Yeah.
Greco, a little judo, some jujitsu, and then I did 4 years in the military. I learned some mixed martial arts in the military,
Wow.
and and then I've been
We
studying.
have a similar path.
Yeah, and then I've been studying Aikido because I love the art of peace. So Aikido is a beautiful art. And then here in Hawaii, there's a lot of people that learn from the Gracie brothers. So there's a lot of jujitsu and judo here. So just to maintain being healthy and, keeping my body fit and keep my youth, I play around with those things.
Do you still train at all, just out of curiosity, or has it been a
No,
while since you?
no, I still, I make a part of my life. I feel my life is I do all the things that I like to do, and even the businesses that I do, I really enjoy, and it's just a part of me. And martial arts is also that. I love testing reality, and I love pushing my body to its limits.
Wow. Yeah, when you think of like like a water path guy, a soft guy, you wouldn't think of a very accomplished martial artist. But it's cool that like you done all these martial arts, yet you're still like a very soft, humble, guy as well. It's just really cool to see that, because um sometimes like like the MMA guys, like they're too attached to this reality, and they just want to get the titles, and they just want to be macho and strong and stuff. And they're not so like they're not very conscious, you know what I mean? Like, but like you mentioned, like the Gracie families and stuff, like Hickson, obviously, like practice like Wim Hof type of stuff, like way before like Wim Hof was even a thing, and stuff. And he was showing people, what he was able to do and stuff. So it's pretty fascinating for sure. Um, but the reason I originally asked that question is because what you said earlier caught my attention. You mentioned something about Bruce Lee being assassinated. I mean, you're obviously an MMA guy. You obviously come from a grappling background as well. To me, and this is I say this with all due respect. I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan, but like to me, I don't see Bruce Lee as the pinnacle of martial artist. I see like honestly what the Gracies you mentioned have done as to be a far more accomplished martial arts system that has like transformed the world and stuff. So when I heard that Bruce Lee was assassinated, I'm going interesting. Like was it was he maybe intending to share something more esoteric, perhaps, or was he, you know, I don't know, like, was he actually did at the time, like, people feared that he was actually going to give people self defense that was effective? Like, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think there's a lot of about Bruce Lee that really isn't even talked about, and I would love to share time with someone at that level of martial arts that had the knowing that he had. When it comes to the energy side of things, he doesn't necessarily talk about the secret arts. He talks about form and things of that nature. But I know that he was using a lot more than the martial arts when he was, throwing a punch. That's why he could throw a 1 inch punch and knock someone across the room. He understood the energy cultivation side, and that's really what I'm drawn to from the martial arts side. It's reading your opponent's energy and thoughts prior to them even making a move. And in Aikido, you're able to return that energy without any type of aggression from a really neutral state. So, that's why I study so many different martial arts as well. I take the best from all of them. And for me, it's not about winning; it's more about the energy mastery.
Wow, that is certainly beautiful. Um, um, we have a mutual friend in Dahlia. Recently, she brought on a friend on my show, Chris Sadowski, who is who has an Aikido background as well, and he shared on the podcast that his Aikido master was able to, you know, like essentially do like an empty force, like Alex does, and like move people with energy and things like that as well. Do you think like you know martial artists um like so like obviously like we talked about the Gracie family and like the modern martial arts with MMA and stuff like that. It's certainly from a physical perspective what they're doing currently is incredible and amazing, and what it's become is like truly like beautiful. However, like do you think within the ancient times like there was more of these esoteric type of practices where maybe they're doing more empty force type stuff in battle and you
Of
know
course, the true martial arts, as soon as you saw your opponent, is when the match would begin. It wasn't even about the physical touching. It's also about the spirits that the artists were working with behind the scenes. And, there's been stories where people could blow up trees with their energy from 200 feet away, as an example. There's stories of people being able to throw lightning bolts at people, and people. I heard stories from a friend of mine who was in a cave somewhere up in China, up in the middle of the mountains, and the martial art people were running across the ceiling upside down and jumping off and kicking them, but not in an aggressive way, just letting them know that they could kick them if they wanted to, like barely touching them with a toe. And again, they were running upside down on ceilings. So when I talk about martial arts, it's from that frame, not necessarily from like the MMA, the true mysticism that's in the undertone of the real martial arts.
yeah, yeah, certainly. That's definitely a beautiful thing. And yeah, I mean definitely. I don't know how much you follow modern martial, MMA, but like, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Conor McGregor and stuff. And, when I watch guys like Conor, I mean, he's not so active anymore, but like years ago, he was doing meditations and stuff. And he was really, at the time when like, a lot of fighters are aggressive and stiff and stuff, he was talking about like being very relaxed, like Bruce Lee. And like, he was
Mhm.
talking about, law of attraction and these types of concepts. And we're like some of earlier like the earlier Conor McGregor matches were almost magical, like where he's like knocking guys out in 13 seconds and stuff like Jose Aldo and stuff. And it's just like it was truly an eye opener. And maybe in his own way, he kind of subtly tapped into that mystical side of it, where he called himself Mystic Mac and stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. But let's just like go back to the more detailed energy work a little bit. I don't want to get too distracted talking about like martial arts. So let's go back to the fire path a little bit. What are some fire path practices that you have done personally? And do you have you had any bad side effects personally from doing fire-based practices, and because obviously fire-based practices are known to give you bad side effects. Could you talk about that a little bit?
No, initially the fire path was amazing for me. I used to be able to sit out in the snow and melt snow in a t-shirt or even without a t-shirt on, in the cold winters of New Jersey. So I was able to cultivate a lot of heat. My healing practices were really strong when I was on the fire path because I had so much energy, but I wasn't as grounded as I am now. I even experienced levitation. In my early 30s, I was levitating for a year or two when I was fasting, and I wasn't using my sexual energy at that time. And I cultivated so much that I just popped off the floor one day. And, from that moment, it happened often for a while. So, I have nothing to say bad about the fire path. It's just, I feel that the water path is a lot more grounded and it's a lot easier on the body.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. It's definitely easier on the body, and makes me, we're obviously have a mutual friend in Dahlia and stuff. So this school is Dahlia school. It's called the School of Chi Energy, but like it's not. They don't call it a water path, but they have a huge emphasis on being yin, like within the yin and yang concept. Like they're have a major, 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 massive emphasis on like being grounded, being like yin, and being on the yin side, and it seems like a lot of practitioners in that school, are very calm people that don't have as many bad side effects as like other systems do. So yeah, certainly like whether it's a water path or a yin based system, I mean it seems like that path is like you know the ideal path